Celtic Badass of the Week showcases a different badass person of Celtic heritage each week. Those who exemplify the give no shit attitude and come out on top. They may come from our past or our present, but rest assured they come from all walks of life and legend. They are men, women, even old ladies and pirate queens. You don't have to be a muscled-up Celt in a fur kilt swinging a mighty sword. You can just be a 4'11" Welsh woman and suffragette who knows jujitsu. Most of these badasses are all too real. While some may be only legend, badass legends though. The only prerequisite for this title is Celtic blood and badassedness. Anne Bonny is the Celtic badass of the week. Now, Anne Bonny was a crazy, mean-as-ass pirate woman who sailed across the Caribbean Sea, messing up anybody who looked at her funny, and generally being a kick-ass scourge of the seas, making a name for herself by hacking the arms off of merchant sailors, stepping on their necks, and then shooting them out of a cannon face first into a brick wall. She was originally born in Ireland around the turn of the 18th century, but being that she was the illegitimate daughter of a wealthy lawyer named William Cormac and his mistress, Maid, she wasn't really all that well received when it came to the, polite world. Now, Mrs. Cormac took out an ad in the Cook County Times front page proclaiming William's adultery, and since that kind of behavior from a woman was really frowned upon in Irish society back in those days, the Cormac clan had to relocate to Charleston, South Carolina, for a more low-key life of lawyering, growing tobacco, and watching a lot of college basketball. A few hundred years later anyway. Now, Anne was raised in Charleston, but from an early age it was pretty obvious that she wasn't going to be the snooty, posh spice, high society, brain-dead debutante that her father was hoping for. At the age of 14, she took over as the primary housekeeper for the estate, and promptly got into a heated fight with the maid that resulted in Anne stabbing her in the gut with a steak knife, Fatal Attraction style. Now, a year later, some jackass horndog dude tried to rape her, so she beat the holy living crap out of him with her bare hands before bashing his unconscious body a dozen times with an iron bar. Now, the dude was so badly messed up that he had to be hospitalized for months. Now, in addition to her headstrong, take-no-prisoners attitude with her insanely quick temper, Anne further frustrated her father by not wanting to date any of the high society, foppish, metrosexual guys that he was trying to set her up with. Instead, at the age of 16, she ran off and married a small potatoes pirate named James Bonny, and moved to Nassau, which was a den of piracy at that time. Things went okay for a while, but as you can probably guess, Anne wasn't the sort of badass babe who was not going to be happy sitting around at home knitting tea cozies. She didn't really fit in with many of the prissy bitches on the islands. For instance, one time she went to a fancy pants high society ball where she was introduced to the sister-in-law of the governor of Jamaica. Now, this bitch made some chatty remark about how Anne's shoes didn't match her freaking purse or something, so Anne hauled off and slugged her right in the face. She went down like the Titanic and lost 2 teeth for her troubles. Needless to say, this didn't make Anne too popular among high society on the island. To further complicate things, around this time, James Bonny decided he was going to start selling out all his pirate buddies to the governor of Nassau in exchange for some cash. Now, since Anne didn't really want to be married to some slimy stool pigeon rat bastard, she started exploring other options. Didn't take long before one presented itself. A small-time pirate known as Calico Jack Rackham arrived on the island and took a liking to Anne. At this point in time, Calico Jack was more renowned for his flamboyant wardrobe and inherent personal charm than he was for his tireless sword arm and booty collecting capabilities, that is. But Anne seized the chance to set sail for her inevitable future badassery, and Jack and Anne hooked up at a keg party one night, and the two fled the island on Jack's ship, called the Revenge, and began a beautiful career of nautical terrorism. Now, since pirates really aren't the sort of folks who took too kindly to fighting alongside of, frail women, Anne disguised herself as a man in order to fit in with the crew. She quickly made a name for herself as a total hard-ass who didn't even bat an eye while hacking up sailors with her trusty cutlass or blasting anyone with any of the 6 pistols she carried on her belt at any given time. Now, she didn't shy away from killing. She worked the ship with the best of them, and she spewed forth enough profanity to make a marble statue of the Virgin Mary start crying tears of blood. She led boarding parties into enemy vessels, she made prisoners walk the plank, and she essentially was considered the toughest, most badass pirate on board the Revenge. Isn't that an awesome pirate ship name anyway? Well, after several months of kicking ass at sea, finally one of her fellow crewmen caught on to the fact that, well, she had boobs. At first, this caused a clamor, and one jackass pirate matey decided he was going to kick the little lady's ass because, oh my God, how can a hardcore buccaneer be expected to fight alongside a woman and still be considered worthy of his eye patch and hook hand? Now, he took 2 steps towards her, drew her cutlass. She drew her cutlass. He whipped out a broadsword. 2 minutes later, Bonny was chucking his bloody, lifeless corpse over the side of the boat. Nobody else ever messed with her again. Now, later in her high seas adventures, the Revenge would actually take on another female crew member. Because, you know, she's kind of broke that glass ceiling and all. The fellow badass woman named Mary Reed. And the crew enjoyed a period of unparalleled success, earning tons of gold and plunder from various ports and merchant ships. Unfortunately, we all know how these pirate stories turn out for our intrepid outlaws. In October of 1720, the Revenge captured a Spanish galleon laden with gold and treasure, and everybody decided to get wasted to celebrate their victory. Well, right around the time the crew was on their second rendition of What Shall We Do with a Drunken Sailor, a ship full of British Marines pulled up, and all of a sudden the pirates found themselves about to get seriously messed up by the limeys. Anne and Mary were the only 2 crewmen who could hold their liquor, so the 2 of them put up a valiant last stand against the onslaught of enemy soldiers. Now, after holding off the Brits for almost an hour, the women were finally overwhelmed, and the crew of the Revenge was captured. Anne was so pissed at the cowardice and uselessness of her fellow pirates that she was, as she was being hauled off by the Brits, she started firing her pistols at her own men. Now, the crew of the Revenge were all thrown in prison and sentenced to death by hanging. Once it was revealed that Anne was pregnant with Calico Jack's baby, her sentence was commuted, and she was released, a common practice for these times. Before she left jail, though, she stopped in to pay Jack a visit. She calmly walked up to the bars of his cells, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "Sorry, Jack, but if you had fought like a man, you would not be about ready to die like a dog." She turned her on her heel, strode out the front door, and completely vanished from history. And Bonny is one of those Sarah Connor type chicks who wouldn't want to mess with if your life depended on it. She drank hard, she fought hard, and she proved herself to be a complete badass in every way. She took shit from no one, upheld all the necessary attributes of badassery, and has been remembered as one of the toughest pirates ever to sail the earth.